advances in technology today are impacting how employers and their people can create more satisfying, more human, more motivating, more successful kinds of relationships.
Welcome to Inside Outside Innovation, episode 97. China Gorman has spent over 20 years in the HR consulting world, including as CEO of the Great Place to Work Institute and Chief Operating Officer and interim CEO of the Society for Human Resource Management. She came on our show to talk about her upcoming conference called Unleash, taking place in Las Vegas, May 15th, and to address some of the questions about technology and humanity that everyone in innovation must wrestle with. Inside Outside Innovation is hosted by Brian Ardinger, founder of Next, a provider of research, events, and consulting services that helps innovators and entrepreneurs build better products, launch new ideas, and compete in a world of change and disruption. For more information on our team, visit next.co, that's nxxt.co, and for information on the upcoming IO Innovation Summit, May 29th through the 31st here in Lincoln, Nebraska, visit theiosummit.com.
Tell me a little bit about kind of what you're seeing out there as far as the changing workplace and what's really needed for a company to have innovative talent on their back channel.
Well, it's fascinating to see how organizations are changing, and particularly through the talent acquisition and talent management lens. As much as baby boomers eschew talking about the different generations at work, the truth is the different generations at work are all very different. And while they may all be in the same workspace, in many cases they're there for different reasons, and they have different kinds of motivations. And so I think the very notion of the Unleash concept is, how do organizations look ahead, look sideways, to really bring their people together and get the best out of them. And one of the things that I see is this interesting dichotomy of the emergence of, although not everything is AI all the time as we would be led to believe in the HR space right now, but there is AI coming, robotics as well. Right. And so we see the technology pathway still a little murky, but it's getting clearer and clearer, and it scares the pants off of most people. But at the same time, we see a real movement towards organizations really focusing on their culture in a more sort of human way, relating to their employees as human beings. So on one side of the aisle, we have the robots are coming, and then on the other side of the aisle, we have, but I really want to engage my team and my employees as real, 24/7 human beings, not sort of just skill sets that clock in at 9 and clock out at 5. So we've got these two sort of diametrically opposed sort of cultural dynamics going on. You could create a case that would say they're both fear-based, right? The robots are coming, or if I don't start to really understand my people in a more human way, I won't be able to retain them, right? And so I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to, for leadership, as they really look at the question of what kind of culture do I need to create to ensure that I can attract, develop, retain, deploy the kinds of talent and the kinds of people that I need everywhere in the world that I need them, at the same time that I'm looking at how technology and AI and robotics and all that entire technological, scary monster, how we have to really start to implement technological advances in our workforce and in how we relate to people. And so it's really upending the HR tech world that we see every day. And to for your listeners, what's fascinating to me is that the startup space in the HR tech sector is on fire, as are the number and the size of investments coming into the HR tech sector. It's really quite astonishing. And I will say that Mark Coleman, the founder of what we now call Unleash Group, which was HR tech world previously. He was the guy that really innovated bringing startups into the whole HR event ecosystem. Very first sort of startup competition was at an HR Tech World event in Europe, and now these kinds of competitions are they're just at pretty much every HR Tech event. But that was Mark's innovation, 7 or 8 years ago. And so we see that now. It's an integral part of the Unleash live event experience. There's a whole startup. We call it an ecosystem, right? With its own stage and with the competition and with the ability for true startups to come to decision makers and have discussions about, here's what we're doing, here's what we're thinking, what advice do you have? Would this be of interest to you? So that we get a real dialogue going between these startup bright minds and the potential marketplace that it serves. And that's a really vibrant and exciting part of the whole expo.
So you mentioned a lot about talent and how it's changing, and the workforce is changing, the environment. So I mean, technology is obviously playing a key role. It's not only playing a key role in having in the specifics of the job itself, whether it's like you said, robotics or AI, but within a personal space. How are employees interacting with technology outside of the office, and how is that playing into the workforce? You have this continuous, almost 24/7 culture of work now and access to work. What are some of the trends that you're seeing, or how are companies kind of dealing with this wave of endless innovation and wave of endless technology that's affecting not only their employees, but the jobs that those employees do?
I'm not sure that anybody has that figured out, Brian. I saw in the newspaper today that there's in at least one state there's pending legislation that would require employers to not require that their employees have their cell phones with them when they're not at work.
Right.
So that they can't actually be contacted while they're not at work. So that might be one end of the continuum, a legislative response solution that says, you work your shift, you can't be contacted by work, period.
Right.
Which is the flip side of the always on culture, right? Where, we take our cell phones to bed with us, and it's the last thing we look at before we go to bed, and it's the first thing we wake up to in the morning before we, greet our bedmate or kids or whatever. We check to see, what emails or Slack mails or, whatever that we have from our workmates. So I don't think I'll be honest, I don't think we're anywhere close to figuring that out. And I really don't think my own personal belief is legislation is probably not the way to go. Employees tend to vote with their feet, right? And so if your company culture is an always on culture and that's not the way you want to live, then you'll go somewhere else, right? And so I think there's some modulation that needs to happen, and I don't know where the answer is going to come, but one of the things I know for sure is that more humans of leadership teams, C-suites, who really understand clearly that the humans that they work with, that work for them, whether they're full-time employees, part-time employees, contractors, Upworkers, whatever the relationship is, but they're participating in the financial success of the organization through work in some kind of defined relationship. Those organizations whose very senior level folks are clued into creating really human relationships. This is interesting because we're talking about this is a sort of a technology topic, but those who are really focused on creating real human relationships appear to me to be winning the game. Technology plays a big part in almost every job, and it's, you just walk through any mall. I guess there still are malls in the U.S., but you walk through any mall and people are still, their cell phone is in their hand and they're interacting with people and being mocked all on the web. But, you see a group of young people, 5 or 6 or 10 of them, at a restaurant or at a table having a meal together, and they've all got their cell phones out and they're, interacting with people who aren't there, right?
Right.
So there's got to be a happy medium, said the baby boomer, right? And maybe that's coming, but I don't think anybody sort of has a handle on it. And that's why I think the programming on the various stages, the various topical stages at Unleash is going to be so, in the U.S. anyway, is going to be such a great experience for our attendees, because we look at all of these issues through from a bunch of different lenses. So we have a number of what are stages, right? So we have a learning and development stage, we have an adoption stage, we have an HR tech stage, a well-being and inclusion stage, we have a reboot HR stage, which is interesting, certainly a recruitment and talent management stage, and so a smart data stage. So we can look at the ability of leaders to really unleash the power of their people through a number of different lenses. And I would hasten to say that these aren't just all HR topics, right? They're leadership topics. They are, if you're a leader in an organization, these are all of these topics are how you have to do your leadership role.
I think a lot of it has to do with, adaptability. So, organizations are trying to become more adaptable to the marketplace, not only from, a talent perspective, but, just competing in the marketplace. And that in of itself is also creating this need for your talent base to be more adaptable as well. Whether it's, thinking or moving or acting more like a startup, or understanding new technologies and being able to adapt to that. What are some of the trends that you're seeing, or some of the people that might be at the conference that can speak to this idea of adaptability and how it's changing the face of work?
I think we have a number of people. So, for example, a guy named Michael Kim, who's the head of HR for Spotify's APAC region. My guess is he's going to talk a lot about adaptability, nimbleness. Mm-hmm. The head of talent for Nielsen, the head of global talent acquisition for IBM, the head of inclusion and diversity for Pinterest, the global head of talent acquisition and employee experience, which I find an interesting mashup, at Johnson & Johnson. We've got David Green coming, the great global director of people analytics at IBM, plus a number of research analyst kinds of people. And so they'll all take different slices to this topic, but the need to be adaptable, the need to be nimble, whether you're a large organization or a small organization, whether you're as big as IBM or you're as small as some of the folks in our startup ecosystem, there are a lot of commonalities about how the advances in technology today are impacting how employers and their people, some of them are employees, some of them are in different kinds of categories of relationship, but how employers and their people can create more satisfying, more human, more motivating, more successful kinds of relationships.
That wraps up another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. Thanks for listening. To hear more about these important topics like adaptation, access, and human resources, register for your ticket today for the IO Innovation Summit, May 29th through the 31st here in Lincoln, Nebraska. Give us a shout while you're at it at the IO podcast, or leave us a review on iTunes. Until next time, go out and innovate.